All right, welcome back to The Big Fight, and in this section I have the privilege of interviewing Mr. P. Sainath, author of Everybody Loves a Good Drought. He's a journalist, columnist, author, and above all, Mr. Sainath, a celebrated human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. You're of course known, remembered, and appreciated for your work and your comments on agrarian distress, rural India's real problems, farmers' problems, farmers' agitations and related issues. But your latest book, which I have in my hand right now, this is the book. It's called The Last Heroes, Foot Soldiers of Indian Freedom. So I want to start by asking you, what forced you to make this very hard shift in public opinion that people know of you, of someone who comments on agrarian distress and farmers, to talk about people who fought in the freedom struggle?
Many things, but first and foremost, this book is also about the rural. All the 15 heroes in it are, and one of the travesties of history writing is that most of us grow up thinking that the battles were all by these returning Oxbridge elites in Delhi, Mumbai, etc. All the great anti-colonial rebellions began in the villages. And it began with farmers and laborers. In this book, you have 3 heroes from Maharashtra who were part of the Tufan Sena and the Prati Sarkar, which declared independence from the British in 1943 and held 600 villages in Satara for 3 years until 1946. And would not allow the British Raj to function. In fact, the leader of that got very angry when I asked him about underground government. He was mad. He said, "हमारा सरकार तो underground नहीं था. वहाँ सतारा में British Raj underground गई. We ran Satara." Captain Bhau. And at the age 95, I see this man once again joining the Kisan Andolan.
Wow.
And I go and ask him, and this is
the Kisan agitation that took place.
Not the latest one, the 2018 March. He started protesting again in his village in Sangli. And I asked him, "What are you doing here in the heat? You're 95 years old now." And he said, then also, freedom struggle. We stood for farmers and laborers. Now also I'm marching for farmers and laborers.
Wow.
So there's your connection.
Inspiring. Yeah,
it's a lot about the contemporary times, the book in that sense. Sanket, in 5 years, there will not be a single freedom fighter, a single human being who fought for India's independence will not be alive.
How many have been interviewed in this? Or
there are 15.
15.
And one village, whole village. But so you can make it 16, 18, whatever.
So essentially, for the benefit of our viewers, let's just tell you that this book is about people who participated in the freedom struggle, the foot soldiers, not the big celebrated freedom fighters that we idolize, but the foot soldiers. 17 or 18 of them left in this country, interviewed by P. Sainath in this particular book. So that's the significance and importance of this book, that the freedom struggle belonged largely to these foot soldiers. In fact, Mr. Sainath, I believe the Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi said it also in 1931, that great men seem to be the cause of revolutions in the world. In truth, the people themselves are the cause.
Absolutely. And the thing is also that there are maybe about 200, 300 around, but many of them are no longer articulate, can't speak. Like in the Northeast, I couldn't do what I really wanted to do. So that was one thing. They're disappearing fast. 7 of those in the book have died since last September.
Oh God.
Now, your next generation, the current generation, will never get to see, listen to, speak, engage with someone who brought them independence. And every one of them would keep correcting me when I use the words interchangeably and tell me, Captain Bhau of the Tufan Sena, he said, we fought for 2 things, don't confuse it. We fought for freedom and independence. We achieved independence.
Oh God, that's a very powerful statement.
Yeah. And every one of them in different ways is saying it. Freedom is a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
Independence we
So
achieve.
you may be independent from a colonizer, but you may not attain freedom.
Yeah.
Very powerful thing to say.
Yeah. And that's why I begin the book with it.
Yeah. This is a very, very powerful statement to make.
And then the other characteristic about them is that they are pan-Indian. The social diversity of what the freedom struggle was, I've tried in the small way to reflect it in the book. You don't read, when you read history books, you don't see ever a Dalit freedom fighter foregrounded. There were many of them. The Lal Sena in Vidarbha had a lot of them. The one who's in this book is sitting not a few hours from Delhi in Ajmer. He is alive, he is in great shape, he is 97 and he walks faster than I do. and Shobaram Geharbar, and much of what he has to say factors in very beautifully into the somewhat irritating debates we are lost in. Gandhi versus Ambedkar,
Correct.
Who was greater?
I think there is a mention of that in this book as well.
Yeah, he
of
says
these debates.
The headline of his story is that when I asked him, I bet he's a self-declared Gandhian. He also made bombs to throw at the British.
And a Gandhian.
and he's an Ambedkarite follower. I interviewed him on Ambedkar Jayanti. He said, "Aapke paas jeep hai na?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I want to garland the Ambedkar Murti." And then quaking, I asked him, "How does someone like you, a self-declared Gandhian, choose between Gandhi and Ambedkar?" Gussa aa gaya unka. He said, "You choose if you want to choose." I choose those principles of Gandhi that I like. I follow those.
Correct.
Those principles of the Ambedkar, Baba Saheb, that I admire, I follow those. Who is anyone to tell me to choose?
This is very significant. Mr. Sainath, do you feel that we are perhaps, as we go along in our understanding and build these ecosystems, are caught in manufactured binaries, whereas the people who actually fought the freedom struggle back then understood the nuances of each and every individual?
You could not have put it better. There are, one of the things that Telu and Loki Mahato from Purulia are saying, and what Shobaram Geharwar from Ajmer said, many of these things brought me home to the feeling that we should not pigeonhole these people. They were far more complex. They were open and susceptible to many influences. The same Shobaram Geharwar told me, "I want you to know, मैंने दोनों नदी में गया, गांधीवाद और क्रांतिवाद." Yeah, and what stories they have to tell. When he was underground, his leadership sent him to Mumbai, to Bombay, and he's very proud of who hid him underground. Prithviraj Kapoor.
That's this trivia about history. This is the great beauty of it, and thus I come back to the point that I was asking you about how we have boxed ourselves into these manufactured binaries. You must have heard of this latest debate around Savarkar, Veer or Mafi Veer, right? Now I know for a fact that Savarkar does not find any mention in this book, but what is your impression of the manner in which this debate is being carried out politically?
See, I actually got to know, I've been in transit and travel, and I got to know about it after landing here, that Mr. Rahul Gandhi had made some remarks. Now my point is this, that you can choose your Savarkar. All large characters were very complex. In my understanding, if I take the period till 1911, then we have to say that at that time, Savarkar was a bona fide revolutionary. I accept that. I think so. And I think that some of the writing before then remains interesting to this day. It's also, that is a fact and no one can take that away.
Correct.
It is equally a fact that after 1911 and his imprisonment, he goes a very long distance in the opposite direction. And it's not, I think it's ridiculous to fight over whether there was a mercy petition. I think it's ridiculous. The fact is, they're there in your national archives. The petitions that he wrote, they are there. You can interpret them the way you want, you can defend them the way they want, but they are there.
As you said, pick your own Savarkar.
You pick your Savarkar from before 1911 or after.
No, but then Mr. Sainath, correspondingly, you look at letters of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. There was a time till the Second Boer War, 1899, where his letters were also signed off by saying, I remain, sir, your obedient servant. Maybe that was the way letters were written back then.
Maybe not.
But later, that language Gandhi never used.
That's not so. In this, it's what you're saying about Gandhi also evolved. Okay, he was not asking for Purna Swaraj even at the time of Jallianwala Bagh.
Correct.
Okay, so that is an evolution. The same Gandhi who spoke about trusteeship in capitalism, and in 1948 is telling in the interviews with Louis Fisher that landlord, zamindari land ought to be taken and there's no question of compensation. It should be, nationalized, so to speak, or distributed amongst poor people. So there is a difference. Here, it's a very different direction the journey takes. It goes backwards to being, and then there are mercy petitions and there are mercy petitions. Okay. Now there are others, like the founder of the Desh Bhagat Yadgar Hall in Jalandhar, who wrote a mercy petition. There were many guys in Andamans who wrote a mercy petition. And within a week after they were released, were back to bombing British cantonments and railway stations and things like that. The founder of the Desh Bhagat Yadgar Hall.
Correct.
He writes a mercy petition saying, ill health, ground, I can't do anything. But he did not write offering to collaborate. He did not write that. He did not say, I will bring young men to the path of the British Empire. These things he did not say. So I'm saying that you can have your beliefs, you can have your interpretation, but these facts are irrefutable and incontrovertible.
But Mr. Sainath, again going back to your book, and we took a slight detour to the present day controversy, but also borrowing from this present day controversy and putting this book into perspective, do you feel that we, while writing our history of modern Indian history, have done somewhat a degree of injustice to these foot soldiers?
That's why I wrote the book. The book is written first and foremost for the people in the book, that their stories be told. And I am saying that you and I and our younger generations, we need their stories in order to better script our own.
Well said.
So that we know where we are coming from, where there are many other controversies.
Do you think, Mr. Sainath, that will help us in being less binary about our freedom fighters?
I think that it's also being less stupid in some ways. I took great offense at the lowering of the national flag for Elizabeth's death. You were honoring the symbol of the oppression of crown of 104 nations, including your own, a power whose existence in your country saw 24 major famines, tens of millions of people die, including 3 million in the last famine. We didn't lower our flags when major freedom fighters died. But I mean, I take great that. But about the revision of history, I think it is such a discipline that will always be constantly revisited.
Are we doing it? Are we doing it enough?
I think we are doing it too much in some ways and not enough in other ways. We are creating, look.
Are we attempting it politically? That's my other question.
My problem is that if you look at, in the sense that you look at the government's Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav website, which I believe is part of an effort with a 110 crores initial budget. I could not find a photograph of a living freedom fighter. I could not find a video, a statement, an article. Look, I've got a book out of their words, and they're around. True. Okay, I could not find one. You know whose photos are there.
True.
Right?
True.
From gas cylinders to everything, the same photographs. And they have section on forgotten heroes, which seems to me to be politically very selective. There is no Tipu Sultan, for instance, in that list. And the fact is that he was the one Indian prince who fought uncompromisingly the British invader to the death. And you know the controversies over that in Karnataka, where an education minister has said, we will do away with Bhagat Singh and replace Bhagat Singh in the textbooks with Bhagat Singh and Tipu Sultan and replace him with Savarkar. I think that sparked the controversies that followed. But I think that you need to do a lot more about the exclusion of ordinary people. The people in this book, they are not barristers or lawyers like both Gandhi and Savarkar were, etc.
Foreign educated.
None of that.
Yeah.
These are people, include cooks, couriers, homemakers, forest produce gatherers. They include Dalits, Adivasis, Marathas, OBCs, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, atheists and believers. And that was that huge, rich spectrum of India's
And
freedom
all
struggle.
of them understood the nuance of the ultimate goal of freedom and independence both at that time.
And they
had the bandwidth.
They understood it in the last few years when I've been speaking to them. And they've been insisting on it. And the other thing is they understood the need to rise above our divisions. You know, they understood the need to rise above our divisions, join hands and fight against the imperial power. That, I think, shows us something that you can do, that you can rise above yourselves. It was the ordinary people of the country who did that. Don't banish them from your history. That's what this book is not about, Savarkar. It's not. It's about who made that independence possible, who pioneered your freedom struggle. The Adivasis of this country, the line I have put in this book is, the first to die for freedom, the last to benefit from it. You know, within 3 years of the Battle of Plassey, Adivasis of Jungle Mahal were fighting the East India Company. For the next 100 years, the elites of this country were seeking accommodation, negotiating accommodation in the British Raj scheme of things. The Adivasis never once compromised. They stood up and fought. Whole tribes were wiped out. This country, and this irritates me about that flag lowering, the British Raj, when it could not quell the Adivasis, created a law, the Criminal Tribes Act. And 200 tribes, your Pardis, Pahadiyas, etc., were stigmatized as these guys are genetically criminal. You know, it was how was it different from the Nazi principles? Okay, of genetic thing. It was, and for that you go and lower your flag.
And this, according to you, is the difference between independence and freedom.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one of the differences, but it's also important that they still suffer. The Pardis, no one will give a job, employment or work to a Pardi or to a Pahadiya in Palamu. They're still seen as criminals. They've been stigmatized so severely. So I'm saying that their freedom has not been achieved.
And what we have achieved instead is appropriation in a very crass, unnuanced way of the freedom icons, politically.
There's also a very big connection between you and me as journalists and these people.
How so, sir?
See, by the way, one of the guys in the book was a journalist.
Wow.
H.S. Doreswamy. He died this April in Bangalore. He was the guy involved in the major controversy with the RSS minister who said he's a fake freedom fighter, etc.
Okay.
When I went to see, after that, any journalist going to see Doreswamy, what are you doing, sir? He'll say, I'm writing my CV, to show that I participated in this struggle. He started a newspaper while fighting the Mysore Maharaja, and he took out 6 titles for it. Okay, so that when they shut down one, the same paper continued the next day under another title.
Wow.
He changed the title multiple times.
Wow. Brilliant.
And many Indian journalists did that. All the way from here to Nepal, there were people who did that.
Correct.
The tragedy is, Sanket, we are so distanced from our history. How many did our media tell people that in April this year, we saw the 200th year of real Indian journalism, the 200th anniversary? Because we talk about Hickey's Gazette and all that crap in the colleges and schools. Hickey was neither an Indian, nor was he doing Indian journalism. He was concerned with the East India Company, the European community. 1822, the first explicitly political opinion papers come with Raja Ram Mohan Roy, with Miratul Akbar, which was in Persian, not in Bengali, and Kaumudi Sangbad, Sangbad Kaumudi. That tradition of journalism, and a man who was prepared to close his publication when they brought anti-press laws. He shut down Miratul Akbar. He was standing up, by the way, for a farmer, a riot called Pratap Narayan Das, who was whipped to death. Look at what their approach to ordinary people was. Look at what our approach to ordinary people.
I think this is an absolutely eye-opening interview. And thank you so much for this book and also this interview, because this just puts the present day controversy around freedom fighters, struggles, their appropriation in such good perspective. Thank you so much for doing that, Mr. P. Sainath.
Thank you.
Thank
My
you
pleasure.
so much for this
Thank
interview.
you, Sanket.
Thank you.